مصدقا لما بين يديه إن الله بعباده لخبير بصير ثم أورثنا الكتاب الذين اصطفينا من عبادنا فمنهم ظالم لنفسه ومنهم مقتصد ومنهم سابق بالخيرات بإذن الله ذلك هو الفضل الكبير جنات عدن يدخلونها جنات عدن يدخلونها يحلون فيها أساور من ذهب ولؤلؤا ولباسهم فيها حرير وقالوا الحمد لله الذي أذهب عنا الحزن إن ربنا لغفور شكور صدق الله العظيم.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khairan to our brother Aslam for the beautiful recitation. So, inshallah, we're going to get into the topic. Before we get into the topic, inshallah, I would like to introduce our esteemed speakers. So we have Muhammad ibn Mufti Munir, Mufti Muhammad ibn Munir, all the way from New York City, the Imam of Masjid at the Van Lake. And alhamdulillah, it's always a pleasure to have our Imam graduate from the University of Medina. We also have Muhammad Hussein, who is a brother, also graduate from the University of Medina, visiting us from Virginia. I believe he's located here now. And then we also have Halal, who is one of the founders of Strides System and is a graduate from Halal Institute. So inshallah, the topic, Muslim family values. We know that the Prophet ﷺ said, خيركم خيركم لأهله وأنا خيركم لأهلي. The best of you are the best of you to your families, and I am the best to my family. So with that being said, we would like to know what does a Muslim family look like, and how can we better match our families with the standards that were set, the high standards that were set from our pious predecessors. And inshallah, we will get into that topic for the following session.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. A big part, this is good or no?
I think that's for the camera.
Okay, طيب Bismillah. All right, good? طيب. So a big part of society and a big part of one's cultural identity, for sure, is the spoken word, poetry. From the proofs that establish that fact is that there's a surah in the Quran named after the poets. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala condemns many, if not most, poets for lying, exaggerating, being clients, friends, followers of the shayateen, except for those who believe, except for those who work deeds of righteousness, to the end of that Quranic passage, Surah Al-Shu'ara. So poetry has a very special place in, I would say, every society on one level or another. And one of the few things that ancient Arabia took pride in and puffed out his chest or stuck out his head and looked down upon other societies and looked up to themselves with was poetry, the spoken word. And there are different levels of poets and there's different types and levels of poetry. Here in the United States, we should all know the power of poetry and the things that evolved and branched off from poetry to this very day. So in Al-Islam and in the Arabian culture, there are different poets that were known before the Islamic period, Jahiliyyah. And their poems, or some of their lines, or as we say, bars, right, were so strong, were so powerful that they were legends, they were famous when they were alive, after they passed. And those lines, those bars, they continued to be famous and legendary and powerful and meaningful after the conquest of Islam. The conquest with the pen of faith, and of course the conquest with the sword, with steel. Both conquests are a reality. So there are some poets from pre-Islamic Arabia that were legends in pre-Islamic Arabia, and their poetry was legendary, what? Post-pre-Islamic Arabia. And from that is the famous, iconic poet, Al-Mutabanni. And he is quoted to have said, this is the line of poetry I'm going to share with you with regards to family values and an Islamic family, in the Islamic family circle, in the Islamic family system, etc. وَالضِّدُّ يُظْهِرُ حُسْنَهُ الضِّدُّ وَبِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيَّنُ أو تَتَمَيَّزُ الْأَشْيَاءُ وَالضِّدُّ يُظْهِرُ حُسْنَهُ الضِّدُّ وَبِضِدِّهَا تَتَمَيَّزُ أو تَتَبَيَّنُ الْأَشْيَاءُ. So I'm not going to translate that line of poetry yet. What I'm not going to do is talk to you about what an Islamic family is. We're not doing that right now. Maybe you were expecting me, or it's on the flyer or the pamphlet, but I want to deviate from that topic just a little bit. And what I'm going to talk about with the limited time that I have with my panelists, may Allah bless them both, I'm going to talk about what an Islamic family is not, and what it isn't, what it is not supposed to be, what it cannot be like. And whenever there's a family structure that claims to be Muslim or Islamic or both, and they have these mistakes, they have these flaws, they have these illnesses and cancers, the result will be calamitous and disastrous with regards to the children, the grandchildren, and the circle of trauma, etc., etc., etc. That line of poetry, that poet, that famous legendary poet, he basically said, nothing is apparent. You can't see the true beauty of a thing until you take a good long stare into its opposite. If you want to know the true beauty of a thing, then stop looking at that thing. Stop listening to that thing. Stop eating or drinking or wearing or riding, whatever that thing that you consider to be beautiful, walk away from it. But instead, you deal with its opposite. And then you'll realize how helpful, how useful, how strong, how talented, how skillful, etc., 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 the opposite is. And subhanAllah, that's profound, is the least we can say about that statement. If you want to know the reality of a thing, the beauty of a thing, if you want to know how deep a thing goes or runs, then look at its opposite. So the mirror effect, right? What an Islamic family is supposed to be, we hear that. A perfect world, a perfect Islamic family. The father works, the mother takes care, the blah, 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 etc., etc. The children, they grow up, etc., etc. But oftentimes we need to walk away and look at the dysfunctionality. We need to look at the traumatic, the toxic behaviors. Some experts say, and obviously they differ on, let's just say, for example, obesity, a major problem in our society. People being obese, people suffering from obesity. And of course, there are people who try to do away with the obesity through dieting, through eating this, through drinking this tea. Oolong tea is infamous for weight loss and metabolism. Okay? Some methods are orthodox, some are unorthodox for losing weight, right? And of course, one of the worst things to be when you're growing up is one of the two extremes concerning your weight. If you're fat, children will mercilessly make fun of you. You can literally, if you ever watch kids when they don't know that you're watching them? Have you ever listened to children's conversation? Not over eavesdropping, but you happen to hear what they're talking about? Have you ever seen children and they don't know that you're watching them? Look how they make fun. Literally, the child will cry. And I'm talking about Muslim school. They'll cry. You fat, you this, you that, you this. Or if you're too skinny, you this, or your mama's this and your mama's that. They may be too old for some of you young brothers and sisters, huh? Vicious. Make fun of people for being fat. And oftentimes, a person is obese, and one may say that it's not their fault that they're obese. So why is a person obese? Is it genetic? Or is it based off of your own eating and sleeping habits, your exercising, and so on and so forth? Or deeper than that, alcoholism. People who drink alcohol, people who are alcoholics, people who they live their lives in a bottle. Is it genetic? My father was a drunk. My granddaddy, he was a drunk. My great-grandfather was a drunk, and that's my destiny. It's in my blood. Alcohol runs in my veins. Or other drugs. I saw my mother grow up on this drug, strung out. Rehab, relapse, rehab, relapse, rehab, relapse. I ain't going through that. I'm just accept my fate as being, it is what it is. And there are other flaws, and there are other problems that many people think and feel are hereditary, and that is passed down through blood, through the genes. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. But there's some experts out there, and there's some researchers out there that say none of these things are hereditary. But what is hereditary? The habits in the household. So your mother was obese. She suffered with her weight, her sleeping, her eating, her exercising, the this, the that. The habits that you saw her practice, the ups, the downs, the ups, the downs, the ups, the downs, that was handed down to you. But genetically, there's no such thing as you being genetically born obese, or you genetically being born a drunkard, et cetera, et cetera. So whether that's right or wrong isn't the discussion. But the discussion is bad habits, bad practices are passed down. That is something which is a fact. Bad practices you learn from your mother and you learn from your father. So therefore, when we talk about a toxic family dynamic, a dysfunctional family, a broken family, right? If we keep allowing the cycle, if we keep allowing it to spin, you cut off the ceiling fan, right? It's a little cold. You cut the fan off, and the fan is still what? What's the fan? What does it do? It still spins for a good couple of minutes, right? Especially if it was on high. Until somebody's brave enough to do what? You got to put your hand up there and what? You got to stop the ceiling fan. Somebody has to be brave enough to, stop the fan. And if not, the fan is going to continue moving for several minutes off of sheer momentum, laws of physics. And that's the family dynamic. I'm clean. I'm off of this drug. I'm praying now. I'm no longer abusive, narcissistic, whatever the issue, whatever the toxicity may be. But it was so vicious, it was so toxic that it's still around for another 2 generations. It's still going to be around for another 10, 20 years before it's out of our system. So it is a very serious topic. And oftentimes we don't realize the reality of this topic until we check out the opposite of the topic. So what an Islamic family is not supposed to be. So if I had anything that would come to my mind at the current moment, or what an Islamic family shouldn't be, is what? What's the first thing that an Islamic or Muslim family shouldn't be? تفضل يا أخي. Yes, we're only talking about وبضدها. A Muslim family should not be what? A kafir family. Well, how does that? If they're Muslim, how are they kafir? What do you mean? They shouldn't be like what? They shouldn't imitate what? The kuffar. In theory or in practice. So a non-Muslim household, what happens in that household, what is allowed, most importantly, because you can make a mistake, versus what is a policy. Understand the difference? A mistake versus a policy. I have a drinking problem. That's a mistake. I know it's bad. I know it's haram. I know it's evil. I hide it. I'm not proud of it. Versus it's a birthday, it's a holiday, the alcohol is what? Has to be there. So first and foremost, based off of your answer, it's safe to conclude that in an Islamic household, munkar can never ever be condoned. You cannot keep silent about it. Uncle such and such, or aunt such and such, or brother or big bro, or this. La, it's not okay. You have your sins, your problems, your errors. I went through it. You can't bring that in my household. Oh, you're this, you're judging me. You used to do it. I know. That's why you can't bring it in the household. Because I used to do it. And I know what it will lead you to. And I know that it's a dead end. And it's going to bring you nothing but destruction and misery. That's why you can't bring it in my household now. So first and foremost, munkar can never ever be allowed to rear its ugly head without any repercussions. And that's a big problem with Islamic society, in which sinful people who do sin openly and publicly, they think that it's okay. And if someone stops them or says something to them or gives them advice, they're extremists, they're harsh, they're mean, they're the morality police, they're this, and they're that. That's a big problem. When the evil is no longer afraid of the righteousness. And the righteous people are the weirdos and the sore thumbs in society. So first and foremost, the Muslim household cannot be a household in which the munkar reigns dominant. We can agree on this or not? How many of our households in which the munkar is what? Is allowed to adi. No big deal. You better not say anything about it. Don't mention it. It's going to upset your father if you say something. Right? It's something that he has to get through. It's a phase that he's going through. Don't make inkar. Don't give advice. That's a big problem. All right, Tayyip, what's next? What an Islamic household, what a Muslim household, what a Muslim family is not to be. I want to hear from you guys. Fadl. It shouldn't be a household in which 24 hours go past and nothing of Allah's remembrance is made. Quran, adhan, dhikr, ilm. In other words, a Muslim household can't just be a normal household. TV, breakfast, basketball, paying the bills, arguments, fights, and then that's it. We live like kafirs. We're not fighting. We're not doing drugs. My daughter's not making zina. My son's not making zina. We're just, chill, good, positive people in society. But Allah's name isn't mentioned, isn't praised. Nothing of Allah's dhikr is in this household, let alone dominating the household. And that's a big problem with our Muslim youth on their phones 24/7. Son, listen, I know you're going to use your phone. I use my phone. I'm on my phone all the time. Phone is important. Phone suits many purposes. There's no doubt about that. Islamic purposes. I can read, I can benefit, I can research. My phone is my office. I do calls with people, emails with people, by Allah's permission, help people out, change people's lives. So I know about the importance of the cell phone. But son, how can you be on your cell phone all day, 24 hours, and nothing of Allah's remembrance is on your phone? I didn't say you're looking at haram. I didn't say that you're listening to something haram. I didn't say that. But what is good with your phone and your relationship? So the believer who reads the Quran, right? And the believer who doesn't read the Quran. The munafiq that reads the Quran and the munafiq that doesn't read the Quran. That's a very interesting hadith. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned 4 categories of people. And that the believer always has some good and positivity with him. Versus someone who has no iman, no Quran, kal bayt al-kharib, like an empty house. All right, tight. Let's move forward. Number 3, what is an Islamic house not to be like? Huh? A household that isn't involved in haram, meaning there are no sins in a household. Income, that's a good one. You feed your family halal meats off of haram wealth. That's a problem. You go on Hajj with haram wealth. There's a big mushkila. You pay for your children's Islamic education through haram wealth. That's a huge problem. And when we say haram wealth, illicit wealth, we don't speak in a manner of prejudice like many people do. The only thing people think about haram wealth is drugs, alcohol, flesh of swine, and that's it. There are many different types of haram wealth and illicit wealth. So first and foremost is, if we have a good automobile, stay with me now, we have a good car, you're supposed to put only the best gas in that good car, right? Let alone bad petrol. All right, Tayyip, that's a good answer. What else do we have? What is an Islamic family not supposed to be like? What can it have? What can't be present? Anybody else? Okay, I'll give one, I'll chime in with 2023. A Muslim household, an Islamic household, it cannot be a household in which the boundaries, borders, and parameters are blurry. The lines have to be clear. You ever drive down the street, some streets, some highways, and the markers are a little faded. It's dark, it's cloudy, it's raining, you can't really see the lanes that well. Or in some countries, right? In the street, there's no what? There is no lane. It's just 10 cars driving, you know, may the best man win, crossing the street, praying Frogger, literally. Bismillah, roundabout, huh? So, remember in the morning, right? So you may have it may be a time in which there's no boundary. So with regards to the golden question, gender, are there gender roles? Of course there are, of course there aren't. It depends, yes and no, or there's no rules. A father wants to be friendly with his children, wants to be loving with his children. This is one of my, I always give this piece of advice, is that if you want your children to be righteous and successful, they need to trust you. They have to respect you. Sometimes children should fear their parents. Discipline is a reality, but they should have the relationship in which my dad, my ummi, is my friend. And I can talk to them about things that friends talk about, not being embarrassed or judged or so on and so forth. A friend. However, there has to be a boundary. You cannot talk to me like this. You cannot talk to your mother like that. You cannot talk to your little brother like that. You can't deal with your sister like that. All right? So I think that a big part of an Islamic household is that it has to, the boundaries have to be clear. The lines have to be clear. And it can't be a thing which the people don't know what's going on. And that leads to my second contribution or addition, and that is consistency between rewards and punishments. An Islamic household can't be a household in which the doer of good has to think and guess, will he or she be rewarded? And it can't be a household in which the child that's disrespectful, disruptive, disobedient, doing all types of problems, and maybe dad will get mad, maybe they'll punish me, or in most cases, I'll get off. And that's another discussion with regards to when children know that you're soft, and they know that you're weak, and they know that you have no spine. And of course, the greatest softness and weakness isn't based off of your muscle and you getting angry, but it's your Islamic spine. You're a sinner yourself, so I know you're not going to tell me about it. I know you're not going to make inkar on me because I know stuff that mom don't know about you. I know stuff that the rest of the family doesn't know. Obviously, the sinner, one who makes sins and habit, he becomes a coward, unfortunately. He becomes a big coward. And you don't have the guts to stand up for the cause of Allah because you got skeletons in your closet. And when your children grow old enough to know about those skeletons, they know about your stash, they know about this, they hold it against you. They can blackmail you, etc. So an Islamic household is a household in which what? The one who does good, it's a guarantee. He knows I'm going to be rewarded. I know it. As soon as Umi hears about what I did, she's going to hook me up. And the one who doesn't pray, who does bad in school, who's beating up and abusing your little brother or sister, they're afraid because they know the moment Abby hears about it, I'm in trouble. So that is tremendous wisdom, is consistency between reward and punishment. And the Quran and Sunnah is full of this, obviously. Allah promises those who do good. Verse after verse after verse, Allah keeps repeating Jannah, the reward of ihsan in this world, in that world, in the grave. And Allah constantly threatens and promises the disbelievers and the kuffar that they will burn and they will be punished in this world, in the grave, and in hereafter. So consistency between reward and punishment is very important. And it can't be a thing in which your father or your mother is too busy to reward you. And rewards should always be hastened. That's how you build up the confidence to do good. Khair, inshallah. I'm going to pass the mic, bidnai ta'ala, to my man, Muhammad Hussein. Is your turn or our sister's turn? Whose turn is it? Okay, so, all right, bismillah. So I'm going to pass the mic. I want to hog the mic, as they say. Okay, bismillah. I'm going to pass the mic one way or another, inshallah. Hopefully you guys get the point. So the last thing I'll say is with your own family, with a family that you're looking to marry into, your family you're giving dawah to, whatever the case may be, try to use the opposite effect. What we're not supposed to be doing, what we're not supposed to be looking like. Huh? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should knows best. Jazakumullah khairan. Fadal.
Barakallahu feek for the interesting perspective, inshallah. Looking at it from a different perspective is looking at what the Muslim family shouldn't be. You touched on the halal income versus the haram income. We're going to try to transition into that with Ustad Muhammad Hussein, inshallah. I'd like him to talk about haram income. How can Muslim families protect themselves from this? And what are the consequences of this? Inshallah, فليتفضل شيخنا.
Hold on.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. If you noticed, this is my sheikh here, my brother. So we have some inside jokes. You might not have caught them, but with the blurry lines and some other things, we used to drive to school together in the morning, and every day was a near-death experience. So it's sort of a loaded question, and as the Sheikh talked about, sometimes it's easier to define something and easier to understand something by its opposite. But before talking about halal and haram income, let's just talk about income for a second and get a little macro about the topic. So number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this world, as they say, our oyster. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us khulafa in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated everything in this world for us. وَسَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا مِنْهُ. That's number one. Number two is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also written for us all of our rizq. All of that has been preordained and predestined. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. Right? So that's number two. Number three is, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated everything for us and created all of these things around us for us to benefit from, there is nothing wrong in pursuing it. Sometimes, especially in our culture, we have a tendency to say if someone is getting after it, if somebody's working hard and pursuing something in this world, that this person is chasing the dunya, right? How often have you heard that? Somebody's working hard, they're going to work early in the morning. Some of us get up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, the time where some people are waking up for tahajjud, others are getting up for work. And we tend to classify and judge these people and say, this person is chasing the dunya. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that there's nothing wrong with chasing this dunya, so long as it's not your end all and your be all, and you realize that it's a means to an end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has beautified and adorned this world for us. قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ. Right? Zeenat Allah. This is all beautiful. The heavens, the earth, the trees, the forests, the mountains, all of these things that, this is the state of 10,000 lakes. We see this beautiful creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we see that people spend money to experience the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Not all parks are free. Like sometimes you have to pay to get into a park. You have to pay to get into the water. You have to pay to go see nature. قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَ لِعِبَادِهِ وَالطَّيِّبَاتِ مِنَ الرِّزْقِ هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا وَكُلُوا مِنْ رِزْقِهِ. So our responsibility, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this world a beautiful place, our responsibility, part of our responsibility, for more than one reason, is to pursue it so that we can take care of our families. First and foremost, take care of ourselves, take care of our families, take care of our neighbors and our communities, and even more importantly, elevate ourselves from being beholden to anyone and having to ask al-istighna'u 'anil nas. Not to be beholden to anyone, not to have to ask anyone for anything. And putting ourselves in a position where we can continue to spread the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who here thinks the Minneapolis Convention Center was free? Right? Some of you paid for tickets or didn't, I'm not sure, but at any rate, this place doesn't happen without the contribution of all of you and the community and us trying to pursue that rizq in a halal way. So, I will say camelback on the Sheikh's point, وَبِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيَّنُ الْأَشْيَاءُ, that in order to understand what halal income is, and halal rizq, and halal sustenance, we realize that while pursuing it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us also, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُلُوا مِن طَيِّبَاتِ مَا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to pursue فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, as the Prophet ﷺ says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَجْمِلُوا فِي الطَّلَبِ. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pursue this beautifully. Right? Pursue wealth and rizq and sustenance in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be pleased with. Not in a way where you'll stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala broke, devoid of any good deeds, devoid of anything that you can stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I did this in this world. So, there's a principle that al-asl, that the origin of ibadat is tahrim, and the origin of al-mu'amalat is al-ibaha. And in order to understand how we seek and pursue wealth, we have to understand what are those things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for us. Just what are the things that we can't do? What are the things that we can't pursue? And these things are very few. And these are guiding principles. A lot of times you'll have questions about, hey Sheikh, you probably get this all the time. I have this particular situation, this particular contract, this very specific thing. Is this halal or haram? And sometimes it's not always black and white, but we operate from bigger principles. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu la ta'kulu riba ad'afan mudha'afa. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam says, Man ghashana falaysa minna. We don't cheat, we don't lie, we don't steal, We don't acquire rizq through haram means. Right? We look at two things: how we acquire it and where we acquire it from. And these are general guiding principles, because nobody can come here and sit in front of you and in 30 minutes tell you everything in this world that is halal and haram. We live in a very convoluted society. We live in an era where there's a lot of complicated things happening. But to the Sheikh's point about how we build our households, we operate from bigger principles that guide us. And if we operate from those principles, we'll know which questions to ask and when to ask them. And when we know, hey, this is not black or white, it's in the gray area, we know to ask. And when we see every gray opportunity, and we attempt to convert that thing into halal, and we blur those boundaries that he was talking about, then eventually, there's no gray for us. Everything is in the clear. And when you do that, you'll stand one day in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no matter what you accumulate in this world, and no matter what title you earn, and no matter what's in your bank account, you will stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala broke. So a long hadith, أَتَدْرُونَ مَنِ الْمُفْلِسِ? Do you know who the broke person is? And they say, well, we understand the broke person is the one who has, no money in their bank account. And then the Prophet ﷺ talks about the traits of the one who is actually broke. And I'll close with this point is, okay, well, you might think, well, okay, sometimes we like to justify, we like to think that the ends justify the means. Hey, I'm just going to do this until I get to this point, and then after that, I'm going to be good. After that, I'm going to be clean. I'm going to get this job, and then after that, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to get to this number, this amount of savings, this amount of whatever, and then after that, I'm going to clean up. We're not created in that way. We always want more. So I'll tell you the ramifications in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter what you accumulate, if it's haram, look around you, look in this community, look in this country, look in the state, look in this world. You'll find people that have accumulated everything in this world and they can't benefit from it. You'll have millions of dollars in your bank account, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give you time with your kids. You own 50 restaurants, but you're allergic to everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not allow you to enjoy what He has given you in this world before the hereafter. And nothing, Sheikh and I were catching up before the talk, talking about our kids and how our kids are doing. We're talking about, when your kids are sick, right? How it hurts to see your kids sick more than when you're sick. When you're sick, hey, I'll suck it up, I'll tough it out, get some medicine, just keep plugging along. But when your kid is sick, it hurts, it's painful, because there's nothing you can do about it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show you your rizq in your kids. Because if you feed them that haram that he was talking about, that dua that you make for them will not be accepted. And every dollar that you put into them, those haram dollars that you used to send them to Islamic school, are not going to do you any benefit. And you're going to be out thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and you will not be able to see the rewards of that in this world before the hereafter. So if that doesn't put the fear of God in all of us, I don't know what will. Assalamu alaikum.